For a small island, St. Simon's Island, Georgia, has a rich and diverse history spanning the historical timeline from pre-colonial America to colonial Georgia to the plantation era to the post-plantation era to the modern era, and all the while the people of St. Simon's Island are working and striving to preserve the history of this beautiful island for future generations.
In this historical tour, we will start with sites on the west side of the island, and then we'll move to the central part of the island and then keep motoring on up further north on the island. There will be a second historical tour where we look at the south and east side of St. Simon's Island in another video.
Welcome to Next Act, Retirement and Travel. I'm Bob.
I'm Sarah.
And we are part-time retirees traveling part-time to explore and experience and learn as much of the world as we can. We loved learning about the history of St. Simon's Island, and we would now love to share that with you.
We'll put up this map to show you where we're going first in the western part of the island. We'll take you to Gascoigne Bluff and tell you about its significance through several eras in history. Then we'll talk about the former Hamilton Plantation era. Next we'll go to the Hamilton Plantation slave cabins, and then on to Epworth-by-the-Sea and its lovely Lane Chapel. After we're done with that part of the tour, we'll come back and tell you what we're doing next in the central and north central parts of the island. In 1736, Captain Gascoigne of the British sloop-of-war Hawke established here at Gascoigne Bluff the base for the naval defense of the colony of Georgia. The Spaniards landed here in the invasion of 1742.
Throughout the ages, Gascoigne Bluff has been the gateway to St. Simon's Island. An Indian village was located here. Captain James Gascoigne of the HM sloop-of-war Hawke, which conveyed the Frederica settlers on their voyage across the Atlantic in 1736, established headquarters for Georgia's naval forces and had his plantation here. In the invasion of 1742, the Spaniards landed at this bluff. Live oak timbers for the building of the USS Constitution, better known as Old Ironsides, and other vessels of our first U.S. Navy were cut on St. Simon's and loaded here in 1794 for shipment north where the vessels were built. During the plantation era, these lands became the Sea Island Cotton Plantation of James Hamilton. A wharf here was the shipping center for the St. Simon's plantations. In the years 1874 through 1902, this bluff was lined with great mills where cypress and longleaf yellow pine timbers were sawed into lumber and shipped to all parts of the world. In 1800, James Hamilton, with his partner John Cooper, purchased land at Gascoigne Bluff. Under Hamilton's stewardship, Hamilton Plantation became one of the major St. Simon's producers of long staple cotton. After Hamilton moved to Philadelphia, management oversight was carried out by his namesake, James Hamilton Cooper, who eventually owned Hamilton. From colonial days, Gascoigne Bluff had served as a deepwater landing. In the plantation era, imported goods and cotton exports for the entire island were transported through Hamilton Plantation's wharf. The causeway, built in 1924, connecting St. Simon's with the mainland, had its terminus here.
Wealthy planter and ship merchant James Hamilton purchased this land in the early 1790s and built Hamilton Plantation. The plantation house was built before 1800. It had a tabby basement
wooden second story, and a roof of either shingles or slate. Broad lawns and gardens surrounded the home. During meal days, the house was destroyed by fire. These tabby cabins were built in the early 1800s. The slave cabins, constructed as duplexes, accommodated 2 families in each structure, had a divided wall between the units and a central fireplace open to each side.
These cabins housed slaves who lived and worked on Hamilton Plantation on Gascoigne Bluff. James Hamilton developed the land in the early 1790s into one of the largest cotton plantations on St. Simon's Island. Following the Civil War and the decline of the plantation era, the property was sold and the lumber industry began. Large lumber mills were built on the property, and the cabins were used as offices and schoolrooms for the mill children. When the lumber mills closed in the 1920s, the Gascoigne Bluff section of the property was given to Glenn County for a park. In 1932, with permission from the county, Casina Garden Club began using the slave cabins as a meeting place. And in 1950, the county deeded the property and the cabins to the club. Throughout the years, Casina Garden Club's mission has been to restore and preserve the integrity of the Hamilton Plantation slave cabins. In 1988, this historic property was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Tabby, a unique building material found along the southern coast of the United States, is made by mixing equal parts of sand, water, oyster shells, and lime. The lime is made by burning oyster shells from shell middens left by the Native American inhabitants. This mixture is poured into wooden molds and formed into foundations, walls, and blocks. Even the floors of these slave cabins were made of poured tabby. In 1945, South Georgia Methodists resolved to establish a religious center. After searching 4 years for a site, the Sea Island Company offered to sell them 43.53 acres of the Hamilton Plantation. Because the conference did not have the $40,000, Bishop Arthur J. Moore asked 9 laymen to join him in signing a banknote for 1/10 of the purchase price. Not one refused. On July 25, 1950, in the Wesley tradition, almost 800 Methodists met under moss-draped live oaks for the formal opening. Churches and individuals responded, paid the debt, and began a tradition of love, prayers, and financial support, which makes God's ministry at Epworth possible. The dream at last, a joyful reality.
Lovely Lane Chapel, built by Norman W. Dodge in 1880, was named St. James Union Church. The chapel is now the oldest church building on St. Simon's Island. Repaired following a hurricane in 1897, deconsecrated in 1911, and used as a recreation center, the chapel was reconsecrated after the Methodists purchased the property in 1949. Restored under the leadership of Bishop Arthur J. Moore, the chapel is now a favorite place for worship, weddings, baptism, and prayer. The magnificent stained glass windows are irreplaceable pieces of Old English art glass. The Methodists renamed the church Lovely Lane Chapel after the site of the 1784 founding conference of American Methodism in Baltimore, Maryland.
We hope you enjoyed those sites on the west side of the island. Now we're going to follow Sea Island Road until it intersects with Frederica Road. Here's a small park on the corner commemorating the Ibo Landing historical event. The actual site of the Ibo Landing event is a little to the west along the Dunbar Creek. After the Ibo Landing historical marker site, we will take you to the historic Harrington School. Then we will be back with you to tell you about the last part of the tour. In 1803, Ibo captives from West Africa revolted while on a slave ship in Dunbar Creek. It is believed that at least 10 Ibo drowned, choosing death over enslavement. The Gullah Geechee, descendants of the enslaved West Africans along the southeastern U.S. coast, passed down the story of the Ibo suicide through oral tradition. The tradition, illustrated by the Ibo saying, "The water brought us here, the water will take us away," highlights the use of water as a means for the enslaved Ibo to escape back to Africa. Many works by prominent African American authors and artists feature similar stories of water or spiritual flight as symbols of resistance. A portion of Dunbar Creek, west of this current location, is still referred to as Ibo Landing.
A visit to the historical Harrington School is well worth it. The Harrington area of St. Simon's Island was settled by emancipated slaves who had lived in the local plantations. The historic Hamilton School, formerly known as the Harrington Graded School, was built in the 1920s and served as the main educational structure for 3 African American communities on St. Simon's Island. It hosted grades 1 through 7 until desegregation in the 1960s, when students left to attend St. Simon's Elementary. In 1968, it was converted to a daycare center and was used for this purpose until 1970.
Over the years, the schoolhouse was much more than just a place to learn. It was a place for the community to gather and celebrate special events together. In visiting the school, the pride the school alumni and community have is apparent. They are doing wonderful work to preserve the culture of the community.
From the Harrington School, we will continue north to 3 more sites. First, we will see the First African Baptist Church, then Christ Church, and finally we'll end at Fort Frederica National Monument.
The First African Baptist Church was founded in 1859. This beautiful 2-story building was built in 1869 by former slaves of the St. Simon's plantations. Members of this African American church traveled from all around the island to attend worship services every Sunday. This could be quite a distance for those members who resided on the south end of the island. A unique feature of the church is its dark stained glass windows. The darkened windows are believed to have been installed as a measure of discretion, privacy, and protection. They can also be considered a symbol of resilience and determination of the African American community of St. Simon's Island, who, despite facing harsh and discriminatory systems, found ways to practice their faith and keep their culture alive.
Next, we'll head to Christ Church, which is the oldest church on St. Simon's Island.
This congregation was established as a mission of the Church of England in February of 1736. The Reverend Charles Wesley, ordained priest of that church, conducted the first services in the chapel within the walls of Fort Frederica. The Reverend John Wesley, rector of Christ Episcopal Church, Savannah, also served this mission under the name of St. James. This was one of the 8 original parishes established in 1758. After the Revolution, this and other churches, which had been served continuously by the clergymen of the Church in England, formed the Protestant Episcopal Church in the United States of America. Christ Church was incorporated by the state legislature in 1808 and given a glebe of 108 acres, and in 1824 was one of the 3 parishes organizing the Diocese of Georgia. The first church built on this property in 1820 was almost destroyed during the war between the states. The present building was erected on the same site in 1884.
Our last stop is Fort Frederica National Monument. Because we have done full videos on Fort Frederica and a companion video on the Battle of Bloody Marsh. We'll just give you a short synopsis here. The fort and its settlement was established in 1736 by James Oglethorpe as an outpost to protect the British colonies in America from the Spanish in Florida. In 1742, troops under James Oglethorpe stopped an attack by Spain and saved Georgia as a British colony. If you haven't done so already, you can watch the full videos on Fort Frederica and the Battle of Bloody Marsh to learn more about this exciting time in colonial Georgia.
We hope you have enjoyed this video of the historical sites of the west, central, and northern parts of St. Simon's Island. We will be bringing you a second video on the sites on the south and east sides of the island. If you have any comments, add those below. We appreciate your feedback very much.
Because we are part-time travelers, we do a variety of travel, from cruises to road trips, from local to international. In order to help you find what you're looking for, we are organizing each of those trips or types of travel topics into different playlists. For everything on St. Simon's Island, you can find it under the St. Simon's Island playlist. If you haven't checked out our videos on our Viking Ocean cruise to the Panama Canal in Central America, you can look under that playlist to check out those videos.
If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a like and subscribe so we can continue to grow our channel and bring you additional videos like this one.
Until we see you again, bye.